The hardest thing was staying focused while being surrounded by people that are winning and crushing it. These guys breaking 6 figures per month. These other guys are setting records at 300K per month in revenue. And then here I was, the smallest guy in the group.
A lot of entrepreneurs, successful entrepreneurs that have that drive, that have the persistency to make things happen, their life stories always begins with hardship.
Gary Vaynerchuk has a beautiful quote which says, macro patience, micro urgency. The irrational belief that, oh, it's just around the corner.
If you were to start a business that was not unfungible, what would you build and why?
You're not going to expect that answer. I don't think I've shared this very much. Maybe I've shared it once before. And there's a universe out there where I am pursuing this.
Yeah, I was not expecting
They're
that.
not expecting that.
No, not at all. I do want us to begin with your early journey before you got into Unfungible. You're passionate about entrepreneurship. You're passionate also about engineering and fitness, skipping rope, just being on top of all. When was the moment where you decided, I don't want to work for someone, I don't want to pursue someone else's dream, and you decided to go down your own direction into entrepreneurship, into being your own boss?
I remember it like it was yesterday. It's very interesting. I was always, I would say, hardworking, ambitious. So are a lot of people. So are most people. You can make the argument. And around 2017, my brother joins me from Lebanon in Canada. And we end up living in this small apartment together next to university. And with him, he brings this idea of e-commerce, entrepreneurship, and Gary Vaynerchuk. So he sits me down one day, we're having lunch, and he's like, Leon, let's watch this video together. I want to watch. He puts his laptop like this, and we watch it while having lunch. And it was Gary V in his fashion, just screaming at the camera, social media, it's the future of social media. And back then, I didn't have Instagram. I didn't have an account on X. I was not in the entrepreneurship world. I was not in the social media world. But I heard this, and I was like, interesting. So I look at my brother, he looks at me. We're like, should we give this a try? And then we end up opening our first online store 3 weeks after, I think. Complete flop.
Yeah.
But this introduced me right here. It planted the seed of the idea of entrepreneurship. Just having the ability to see and create something that was not existent 3 weeks ago into something that now people are going on the website, taking a look, the prospect of them buying, and the prospect of me building a business in 3 weeks was something I fell in love with. I fell in love with the challenges, with the skill sets I had to learn to know how to set up a Shopify. What images should I use? The mistakes we ended up making. And I would say the blessing experience was my brother just planting that seed with me.
Amazing. Yeah. I think if you don't have someone there to support you and sort of spark that driving you to take action, it takes a little while longer to make it happen on your own potentially.
And what I'll say about this is the importance of culture. There's a reason why certain cultures around the world have a greater entrepreneurship tendency than others. So I grew up in Lebanon, 18 years in my life, was never exposed to entrepreneurship. It was not a common thing for friends to just go out and start something. That person selling lemonade on the street, that person flipping sneakers, that person buying and reselling God knows what. It was not around. It was not part of the culture. So I ended up going to Canada, and I was never exposed to entrepreneurship, which is also why in the US, there's a propensity for a lot of young entrepreneurs to make it because they were exposed early in their journey. Think of Luke Annetz. The guy was like 15, 16, got into the game of e-commerce. So this is representation. If sometimes you know what they say, your environment has a great impact on the outcome. Sometimes that environment is a culture. Other times, if the culture doesn't help you, that's where finding a group of friends that share these same goals, values, aspiration, and interest comes into play.
Yeah. You make a good point that I wanted to bring up about Luca Nets and about your own upbringing and environment. A lot of entrepreneurs, successful entrepreneurs that have that drive, that have the persistency to make things happen, their life stories always begins with hardship, with not a lot. Yet they overcome this hardship. I feel like that drive comes into them compared to potentially someone that lives, quote unquote, a regular life where they don't have hardships growing up, where they don't need to fend for themselves, where they have the comfort of their environment. Do you think that plays a part in? Do you think that plays a part in your journey and in the journey of any other founders and entrepreneurs?
It's a very interesting one, and I would say that was the hardest thing about building Unfungible, especially during the bear market. During the bear market, there was, I think the business capped at around 15 to 20K based on my skill set back then. The business was around that per month revenue. And the hardest thing was staying focused and building something that is not growing at the speed and intensity you want it to, while being surrounded by people that are winning and crushing it. I remember I was a group of friends of mine, all very successful entrepreneurs. And it's like, these guys breaking 6 figures per month. These other guys are setting records at 300K per month in revenue. And then here I was, the smallest guy in the group. And I remember it almost made me feel, it was that positive pressure that makes you want to grow, but it also makes you feel bad. It's like, man, like I know these guys, they're younger than me. They're not any smarter than I am. Everyone's here is hardworking. And I would say it was the part of staying focused that was the hardest on something that you don't really know how long it will take for it to work. I didn't know when the bull market would start. I didn't know that we would get product market fit on a new product like the space program for us. And what a lot of people would do, especially if they are less experienced, would be to pivot to the new shiny opportunity. Back then it was AI, for example. I would imagine a lot of people would have pivoted to starting AI agencies. But that's where, experience comes in. And it's a big reason why in Web3, a lot of people struggle to stay focused on building one thing and one thing only, just because there is so much distraction. So many women in the red dress. They're seeing people every single day making generational wealth, buying into that token, and then doing that airdrop farming, and then partaking in that airdrop campaign. There's so many ways to make money in Web3, and wins get amplified on the timeline.
Yeah.
So builders who are sitting there building something that could take years to mature are seeing all these screenshots, and they're like, you know what, let me actually get a taste of this. Let me try. But then when you end up doing a lot of things at the same time, you do nothing.
Yeah. Now, let me ask you, as you mentioned, there's a lot of things that can distract you. And it's tough not to get distracted in a space like Web3.
Oh, yeah.
I want to ask, have you ever felt almost distracted when building Unfungible? If not, what mindset shift did you have to do in order to really remain more focused on the overarching goal that you set yourself out for?
Gary Vaynerchuk has a beautiful quote which says, macro patience, micro urgency. So you need to move in your day-to-day with incredible urgency, as if the world is ending tomorrow. But then you also need to develop the framework where you are patient in the macro, because good things take time to happen. And I say a lot of me working on Unfungible was this. It was this irrational belief that it will happen soon. And every year, for me, I thought, 2022 when I started Unfungible, I thought 2023, like a year and a half in, I would be good. I would be settled. Ended up taking twice as long. So instead of it being a year and a half, it took 3 years. But that was the irrational belief that, it's just around the corner. It's just around, I just need one more thing, one more unlock, one more click for it to happen. And I think that's entrepreneurship, man. I don't think anyone in their rational mind would decide to do something that exposes you to your biggest insecurities, that exposes you to all the things you do not know. That it's a painful process. It's like a butterfly trying to the worm becoming a butterfly.
Yeah.
It's to break its old identity. That's very much business and entrepreneurship.
Interesting. On this journey, you said 3 years of building Unfungible now, from 2022 now going into half of 2025. What would you say was the biggest mistake that you've made as a founder building Unfungible, and what were the lessons that you learned along the way?
An even bigger mistake that has a lot more lessons is what allowed me to build Unfungible, but that was actually pre-Unfungible.
Okay.
So the biggest mistake I've ever made in my career, which ended up costing me 3 years of my life, just turning in circles, was trying to reinvent the wheel when it came to business.
Okay.
I was in the game of media with Instagram. Remember the whole Instagram theme page era? And I was part of that era. I pretty much dominated the engineering and technology space. I owned the largest network of pages in that niche. And what the traditional business model was, you monetize using paid ads. People come to you, people were reaching out to me. They were like, Leon, can you advertise this? Can you advertise that? For me, it could either be stubbornness. It was a mix of stubbornness and a vision. I was like, that's not the business I want to build. Instead, I want to build a brand. So the way I started operating was less like a media company, more like a brand. I almost tried to become a supreme.
Yeah.
I dropped merch. I dropped branded agendas. And I was trying to build a brand that represented a lifestyle.
Yeah.
Which was the lifestyle of engineering and technology. That was the people. It's a lifestyle.
Yeah.
But it never ended up working because I was reinventing a business model that was not native to the one that I started. I was in the media game, and I should have stuck to running it like a media company, because the people that were coming to me, my potential prospects, came to me for the content, not for the merch. or the products. So it was me trying to reinvent this. It took me 3 years to learn that. And it was actually me doing the biggest launch of my career, spending thousands of dollars on products. And then a couple of months after, going down the basement in my apartment where I was stocking the products and just seeing them there collecting dust. I looked at that, I was like, yeah, that was a failure. But that taught me the importance of really just dialing in and identifying a core problem. Don't reinvent the wheel. And if you want to create a brand from the beginning. Don't start with the media and then try to pivot, try to rebrand. And that was the reason why when I came into Web3, I identified the problem, build the solution around that, and we are today with Unfungible where the business is.
Exactly. Successful, might I add.
Successful, yeah.
Yeah, amazing. I want to throw a fun question at you.
Okay.
You said you built a media business on thematic pages on Instagram, now Unfungible. If you were to start a business that was not Unfungible and not a media brand, for
Very
example, what would you build and why?
If I were to start a business that isn't Unfungible, what would it be? You're not going to expect that answer. I don't think I've shared this very, very much. Maybe I've shared it once before.
Okay, we're getting alpha.
I would actually, there's a very high likelihood, and there's a universe out there where I am pursuing this. I would have actually become a dating coach.
Okay. Yeah, I was not expecting
They're
that.
not expecting that.
No, not at all.
21, 22 were 2 years of incredible development for me personally. I had just gone out of a very long relationship during COVID.
Yeah.
And I found myself broken. My biggest insecurity was actually a pretty woman. I remember I would walk on the streets of Montreal during summer and just seeing a good-looking woman walk by, I got that physical reaction in my body. And then I heard this quote from Jordan Peterson once, who said, beauty is intimidating because it is a reflection of what you aren't.
Okay.
And for me, it was just the I realized that I felt deep down that I wasn't worthy of beauty, or I wasn't worthy of that person or that person. And 21, 22 were years where I just had to reinvent myself. I had to overcome that insecurity. I had to get back to learning how to go out, how to flirt, how to build a social circle, how to become the man that is desirable.
Yeah.
To a lot of women. And during that journey, I met people that were in the industry. I started traveling with them. I have some pretty interesting moments that happened. But I realized that there were a lot of men just like me that were facing the same problems. And in business, you are your best customer. So if you want to build a business, oftentimes the best businesses are built by the founders who themselves had the problem that they are solving.
Yeah.
And the fact that, I understand the pain, I did a lot of work to overcome it, there's a very high likelihood that I would be making a very different type of content right here, sitting on that chair.
Interesting. One thing that I do want to follow up on what you've mentioned about becoming a dating coach in a different life is the confidence in speaking with people, speaking with women. You've likened it a lot to and connected it to sales. What impact do you think one has had on the other? Either you going through this development of becoming a better man has had on now your journey in the sales department, or vice versa, if sales was something that
very interesting
impacted you first?
Very interesting question. The main one would be getting used to objections. The first step about breaking any beliefs that you have about yourself is by facing that fear. So the first step to break a fear that you have is to face that fear. And if you're afraid of women, you have to go and talk to more women. And in the process of doing that, you just become numb to objections. I remember the first time I met these two dating coaches in Mexico, Playa del Carmen. We became very good friends. And we ended up traveling together a couple of times. And they would be like, Leon, go talk. Just like that. And then I just had to stand up and go talk. And I remember the first time I had to do this, I felt like I needed to puke. But then second time, third time, fourth time, then you become used to it. You become numb. And it almost becomes a game where, oh, you got that objection? Guess which one I got?
Yeah.
Oh, you got slapped. So it becomes a game of how quickly can you get rejected?
Yeah.
Pretty much. And sales is very much the same thing. Because someone that is good at sales doesn't take the objection or the rejection personal. It's like, oh, they didn't like me. It's like, no, it didn't work out and it's totally fine. And you almost gamify the process. And that's something that directly helped me in sales.
Yeah. It's like there's only so many objections that you can possibly have. So once you get all of them unlocked, you're able to
totally
to find the answers to them all.
And you're like, oh, I've heard that before.
Yeah, here's how I'll respond. Interesting. Amazing. Okay. I want to shift the conversation over to speaking a little bit about your marketing journey and the impact it's had on obviously building Unfungible, but also everything else that you're doing with your personal brand, with content as well. How did you get into marketing? Obviously, I would assume your education background is in engineering. Your passion was in engineering. Obviously, you were doing media based on engineering, but where did the full shift tilt to marketing happen?
It was the necessity of learning marketing that made me realize that I actually really enjoyed that. So going back to the story about creating the e-commerce store with my brother, That journey itself led me into the world of marketing, where I started watching videos, consuming content. And by doing that, I found myself starting to subscribe to marketing newsletters, starting to order books on Amazon about marketing. And I remember the moment where I realized that, oh, this is actually something that I like, and it's not normal. It's not a normal hobby that everyone has. I was sitting at the gym. So it was the university gym. The first floor is like the locker room with tables. And then the basement is the gym.
Yeah.
I was sitting there reading the book before training. It was a marketing book called Contagious, Why Things Catch On. It's pretty much a book about virality. And then this guy comes in. He's like, oh, Leon, that friend. And he sits in front of me. We started talking. And I'm like, bro, I'm reading this really interesting book. Can you believe that it's like social proof is that powerful? And they did this experiment. And then I look at him, and clearly from his face, he doesn't care about anything I just said. And then after this interaction, I realized that, okay, no, like, it is not universally interesting.
Yeah.
This is something that I've uniquely found interesting. And naturally, I started, during my university degrees, I would find myself reading in my pastime more marketing books than I would anything else.
Yeah. And that's where it all to go.
Yeah.
Amazing. And let me throw a question. When it comes to your experience and the knowledge that you've gained, which has mainly been in Web2 marketing, compared to now your work experience working in Web3, what would you say are the biggest differences that you see?
Very interesting. Two big differences between Web2 marketing and Web3 marketing. The first one is the choice of platform. Marketing on X and marketing on Instagram, YouTube, TikTok are very different ballgames.
Yeah.
Just how content packaging happens is incredibly different. So on Instagram, you're limited to video and image content, static images. On X, marketing is multifaceted. It's like a war front where you have a lot of fronts going on, and you're trying to win on all fronts. You can have written text, you can have long form written, you can have articles, you have video, and that breaks all the genres of videos where you have very raw video content, selfie style. We've seen people crush it with that type of content. We have high production short form, then we have high production long form, then we have live streams, spaces, you name it.
Yeah.
And that's why X is a very dynamic platform, because it allows you to use all these different content types. And a good founder and a good creator is one that knows how to use all these mediums to communicate their message. So just from a fundamental perspective, how you market, how you make yourself known in Web2 and Web3 is very different because of the nature of how content is created. That's the first thing. Number two, a lot of Web2 marketing is built on direct response. I put an ad, and the goal of the ad is to highlight your pain point, uncover how has that affected your life emotionally, and then position your solution as the cure for that. It's direct response marketing. Web3 is, a lot of it is called, it's narrative warfare. Who controls the narrative? And how do you create the narrative yourself? That's why I compare Web3 marketing with propaganda. Because propaganda, think about it, it's just the word is propagate. You're trying to propagate an idea in the marketplace. And Web3 is very much a winner-takes-all industry. Literally draw a spectrum where you have the failures and the successes of the industry. There's no middle ground. You either have a very few projects that are super successful, they attract and collect all the liquidity in the marketplace, and then you have the graveyard of projects that no one has heard of.
Yeah.
That is in the hundreds of thousands and that we will never hear of. The reason why is the projects that were able to win are the ones that were able to capture the narrative and become the number one most spoken about project. And you create narrative by propagating your ideas, by showing who you are, who you're associated with. You introduce something new in the marketplace. You create a common enemy. You start a movement and you hitchhike on other trends and other metas that exist in the marketplace. And this right here is a very big difference between Web 2 and Web 3. In Web 2, there are phenomenons where you create a trend. For example, we're seeing the Labubu doll right now.
Yeah.
It's a movement. Web 3 marketing, the Labubu doll phenomenon is the only way you do Web 3 marketing. So while in Web 2, it's a big success story, in Web 3, that is the norm. That is how it is done. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I think we've normalized short, high attention, hyped narratives.
Yes.
That people really need to they really need to take advantage of when they have the attention, because once it goes, so does the eyes that are not
It's very difficult.
retained. Yeah.
Very difficult. Web 3 marketing is very difficult because your total addressable market is very small as well.
Yeah, that's the main issue. Because sometimes I do think we don't target a lot consumer behavior. Albeit, I always think the same consumers that are within Web3 and we are targeting, and all Web3 founders and teams are targeting, are also being targeted on a daily basis by Web2
Absolutely.
brands and projects.
Absolutely.
Yet the consumer behaviors are quite different at the same time.
Very
So
true.
that's something that's still not yet fully deciphered in our space. It's like people come onto the timeline, they shift behaviors the way they...
But the reason why is so you said people's behaviors change in Web 3, but it's true because the outcome that they're looking for is very different.
Yeah.
Going on being in Web 3 versus Web 2. People in Web 3 are looking to make money. So their behavior trends towards things that will help them make more money. In Web 2, no one is trying to, you don't go on Web 2 platforms thinking, okay, how can I buy the next product that will help me flip that into a 10x? So the psychology of people is very different, which is why people's greeds gets unlocked in Web 3. It's like something happens, people join CT and it's like everyone's greedy all of a sudden.
Yeah.
But this is just human. That's why they're in the space in the first place. And a big part of it as founders that are trying to, a lot of times founders try to market with what they think the space should be or should look like versus what it actually is. They're trying to market to only the people who care about the technology or who care about the features. But in truth, people in Web3, if you have a token, if you have an NFT, if you have something, they just care about their own assets.
Yeah. Yeah, I think, and I've heard a lot of founders speak about the case of having utility, having a use case, having a product that makes that connection to Web2, where people look for products rather than look for ways to make a return on whatever they purchase. But I think we're still quite far away from that. Speaking of marketing, and we've touched upon a couple of ways to market within the space, you have been synonymous with the founder funnel, a concept for founders to put themselves as the face of their project and their brand and build outward and publicly through that. Where did the concept itself of the founder funnel originate from?
Yeah. The founder funnel originated from the very exercise I had to do to build Unfungible. So I remember in 2022, I sat down and I was like, I opened the Unfungible website and I was like, how am I going to market this thing? And I tried a couple things during that time. 2022 was a year of just experimentation. I started doing YouTube videos. I started to create a little bit of content on X, and I tried to do some influencer marketing. So what I did, I pretty much took the Web2 funnel of having a free lead magnet that people would opt into and I would retarget them in the back. And I did this exactly. I made a case study and a guide on how to market the project. And I had these influencers. I remember I had paid $1,000, $1,500 budget, and I had these influencers post it. And it didn't work. Didn't get me a single good lead. Versus that YouTube channel that I had was printing calls on my calendar. So it was the very exercise of me trying to solve the problem that I had that led me to uncovering the founder funnel. And then I systematized it And I was like, okay, here's like, I systematized it into the branding and the packaging, which is the founder funnel today. And yeah, since then, I haven't looked back. Double down on what works. That's the motto in business.
And I think it's important to double down on what works, scrap what doesn't.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people can never let go of the things that don't work and focus on what does. It's Pareto's law?
Yeah.
80-20.
80-20.
That's the one.
100%.
Yeah. When it comes to you creating content, as you said, you started on YouTube, you've seen success with leads coming in. But at the same time, you're also creating content as a creator prior to that. What are the differences between a creator founder, as I like to call them, like yourself, and a content creator such as myself, which is your purpose is to build a business and use content towards your advantage, while mine is more of a passion project, let's say.
Very interesting. The reason why most creators fail is because of what you just said, which is the difference in being a creator versus being a business owner. The reality of things is a creator is a business owner. The business that they have is their personal brand, which happens to be a one-person team.
Yeah.
Because if someone is creating content, it means they're trying to monetize it. So the moment you're trying to monetize something and bring revenue in, you have a business. And it's that very thinking that leads a lot of creators to never actually succeed making money, because they think of themselves as content creators, not as business owners. Because when you're a content creator, what are you optimizing for? Likes, views, followers, impressions, the vanity metrics. When you're a business owner, what are you focused on? The bottom line. I need the revenue to come in so I can grow this thing. So the moment you shift the perspective from, okay, how much impressions can I get to how can I build a machine that actually brings revenue in and brings business in, your perception changes. And I say this because I've been in that game. When I was doing the media company, the reason why I was never able to monetize it and build a brand out of it was because I was very much, for the first 3 years, going for the follower, likes, impressions game. And that I got. I think we have over 1 billion views generated. 1 billion views, imagine.
Crazy.
It's a lot of views, man, 1 billion. But never was able to monetize. And that's what I've learned. I was treating that like an audience, just views, not as a business. So that's where I would start for creators. You're a business owner. You're not a creator.
Yeah. I think purpose, I would put it all under purpose as well, because a lot of the times content creators will not have a purpose. They'll create for the sake of creating without a plan or purpose. True. And they don't treat it like a business where there's actually a journey that they have to go on to achieve a broader vision. You did say, as you said, create with purpose, create with the mindset of being a business owner.
Absolutely.
If you were to start from scratch as a founder, building your personal brand, what would it take to reach an optimal level where you're starting to see results, you're starting to see impact? What would you have to do?
There's two ways of looking at it. So if you were a business owner looking to kickstart the founder funnel, there's one of two things you can be doing. The first one is you can start with the product and then use the founder funnel to generate attention into the product. Path number two is you start with the founder funnel and then you build the product on top of that attention. What do I mean? Unfungible, for example, I started with the product. We have an agency. How do I create content that funnels that into the agency? Mr. Beast started creating content and then started Feastables and Beast Burgers and everything else. So he started with the content. Most founders that partners with us or that are watching the content most likely are starting with the product. So they already have the product. the type of content you should be making is one that positions you as category king. I think the keyword for the founder funnel is not celebrity, is not influencer, is not KOL. The keyword that best represents the ideal outcome out of the founder funnel is category king. You should become known within your sub-industry, who you are, what you stand for, what are you building, and why are you building it. And your content should revolve around this. Should revolve around you giving your opinion on how you believe the industry is moving, why it's moving this way, your observations of certain trends. Oh, the CEO said this, here's what I think of it. Or here's why I believe that this is a great innovation or not. Then the third type of content is about talking about your own experience. These are the types of posts that I say, I spent half a decade building online brands. Here are 10 things that I've learned. So you talk about your experience and you bring people in. The reality is it will take a lot of time if you're trying to do it the organic way. Building anything meaningful takes a lot of time, especially a founder presence that is respectable. So it will take a lot of time from these founders unless they find a way to amplify it. So using influencers. Every team has a budget, has a marketing budget. And this is something we're recommending our partners, which is take a small percentage of that budget. Instead of spending it on a faceless brand that has no character, take a small percentage and spend it on the founder account itself. Get some of the influencers to boost your pieces of content, to give you the visibility, help you shorten a little bit that growth curve.
Unfortunately, a lot in Web3, and this is where we also come in with the FFA, is a lot of founders, there is no content to amplify or a respected image to amplify. But that's where we come in with the FFA to help these founders out, especially when it comes with video content, because video production and having the founder front-facing, doxed, and speaking their message to people is super powerful and super impactful. How can founders, but also creators, get into video content?
The number one mistake creators make when trying to get into video content is they sit down and they think, what type of video should I be making? They're thinking about the content type before they're thinking about what they should talk about. So you get the old way of thinking of content is content type. I want to make short form. I want to make a podcast. I want to make a long form video. I think of it differently. I think of it in terms of content packaging. I have this idea or I have this message that I want to talk about or share. What is the best packaging for that very specific piece of content? Because there are some ideas that you have that are best packaged in a one-liner tweet. Others are good articles. Some are threads. Maybe that could be a long-form video or a short form, or it could be a full 1 hour podcast interview. When you start thinking in terms of packaging, you actually start asking yourself the right questions, which is, what do I even want to talk about? And when you ask yourself, what do I want to talk about? It puts you on a journey and it gets you to think about, okay, what will actually get me the results that I desire as a creator, as a business owner, as we've talked about. So the biggest mistake is just sitting down and thinking, okay, I need to create a video. What do I speak on? And you end up with bland content that does not fit the broader narrative and that ends up being over-optimized for views and impressions, not optimized for anything relevant, which is business results.
Yeah, I think it goes, everything sort of leads back to what we spoke earlier about having that purpose, creating for a reason.
Yeah.
And not just creating for the sake of putting something out there.
Yeah.
Which is super important. I want to touch upon a common area in Web3 because obviously a lot of content is on X. In Web3, we're not really used to being doxxed or public facing. Anonymity has always been something that has plagued, in a way, the Web3 space. A lot of people find it tough to create content, video content, put their face out there. What are some of the limiting beliefs that you believe are holding people back? Even like myself, for example, from grabbing your iPhone, sitting down, obviously after finding something good to talk about, where you're then capable of filming yourself, looking in the camera, speaking to the camera,
Absolutely.
and then clicking post and not really thinking about it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, being able to record yourself on camera is a skill that will need to be learnt and developed. The reason why most people don't even put themselves on that endeavor, although they know and a lot of people want to get into it, is because of, like you said, self-limiting beliefs. So what do I tell people when they come to me with self-limiting beliefs? Because I've heard it all. I've heard it all from founders, from creators. Leon, I want to get into video content but my French accent is horrible. Leon, my Indian accent, I hate it. Leon, I don't speak English well. Leon, I don't look good. I'm too skinny. I'm too fat. My lighting is bad. And you know what I tell them? I'm like, you're right. You're right. You have a thick accent. You're right. You're not the prettiest person that I've seen on camera. And it's true. Then what? What do we do about it? By asking yourself, then what? You take back control. And it's like, okay, then what can we do about it then? You can either still do it. Are there creators out there doing English content with a thick Indian accent? If the answer is yes, then okay, here's your green card to go do it. Does that mean you're going to have to work on yourself? Progress when it comes to your articulation. Get better at your delivery. Maybe present yourself in a better light by wearing clothes that don't make you look as fat, or just get in the gym. Yes, because fundamentally the answer is cool. You have these self-limiting beliefs. What are you going to do about it? Are you just going to raise your hands and be like, that's it, I give up. I will let life happen to me versus me making it happen for myself? The reality is, if you do not get into video content, 2025 moving forward, I think you're very quickly going to become irrelevant in the marketplace. The only creators that will stay relevant in the age of AI are the ones that know how to present themselves on camera, that know how to speak, and that know how to convey a message and build a movement around them.
I speak from experience, and I think a lot of people that have limiting beliefs, it also comes down to mastering self-acceptance. And because, as you said, people will have accents, people will look the way they look, people will dress the way they dress, they'll be whatever size or width, whatever. Some things you can work on, some things that's what you've been offered. I think it's coming down to just accepting who you are.
I agree. What
you can improve on, and then taking the action steps needed to get in front of a camera, filming yourself. And
it's very interesting. I was just speaking to this creator today, and I'm not going to name who it is yet, but he was telling me about how he has always had this branding with his personal brand as like a branding name, not his personal name. And I asked him, I was like, why? Like, tell me why. I know you like the name that you have, but like, why don't you use your own name? He's like, man, my name it's an Arab name. And he's like, bro, it's like not as easy to pronounce and not as easy to remember. And it's very new, very different. I'm like, yeah, exactly, bro. Make your name known. You are your name. This is your identity. This is who you are. Wear it proudly. Like you said, self-acceptance. Wear it proudly. And it might not be a name that you can easily pronounce or that is easily rememberable. Make it rememberable for people. Make it easy to remind.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's the barriers that goes within people's heads when it comes to something like this. I I know we only have 5 minutes left, so I want to get 2 more questions in.
Sure.
We spoke a lot about Web3 creators, Web3 founders. What would you say is the biggest difference between creators that create within the Web3 space and those that create within Web2, those that are on TikTok, YouTube, Instagram?
The biggest difference between Web2 versus Web3 creators is the ease of monetizing their brand. In Web3, it's a lot easier to monetize your brand once you have a couple thousand followers. When you have a couple thousand followers, sponsorships will come to you. You will be able to do the airdrop farming. You will have enough brand to earn the points and the airdrops to get on the leaderboards. In Web2, you only really start making money once you get it to a certain stage of your brand. Like, you need to be established. You need to, even if you're a micro influencer, you still need to have a respected audience. So this ends up creating a phenomenon that we've so commonly seen, which is a lot of these creators end up over optimizing in Web3. They end up over optimizing for maximum extraction. How much money, how many sponsorships can I take? How many airdrops can I participate in? They over indexing on this too early, which ends up burning their brand. Versus creators, for you to get at that stage, you've already gone through the learning lessons and the sometimes years of brand growth and brand experience.
Yeah, I think a lot of times this happens because, and I've seen it happen a lot of times, it's because for some reason in Web3, people love to forget. They might not forgive all the time, but they love to forget what people do or what people have shilled or what people have participated in. Especially, I think a lot of small creators will take that for granted, thinking, I'll post a shill, I'll get paid. In a day or two, it'll pass by, no one will notice. I think a lot of cases, this is what happens. And as creators grow, that gets ingrained into them. Oh, I'm still small enough. I'm not at 10K. I'm at 9K. I'll post another shill.
I can
get away with it.
Yeah.
Nobody will notice. And I think people get into that habit, which is dangerous as you continue to grow and you build somewhat of a community, albeit potentially not on the most natural terms. I think last question, I wanna go a bit more into the future. We're in 2025. Spaces program is thriving. The FFA, as you know, we're making great headway on it. What is your vision now for Unfungible for the next years?
We're going to build the world's largest movements. That's what I know we're going to build. We're going to be the people that are going to engineer the largest cultural campaigns when it comes to marketing. And the reason why we're starting with the FFA is that's guess what? The first part of the equation. If you're trying to build a narrative, you need a narrator. And it all starts with the founder. And that's why we're starting with the FFA. And we're going to absolutely dominate this niche.
That's for sure.
That's for sure. Let's go.
I think that was it. Well, it's been a pleasure having you on the first episode of the Flow podcast. Yeah, it's been a pleasure, and we'll do it again sometime for episode 2.
Good stuff, man.